everyone. Thank you so much. All right, welcome back to the Navigate and Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm here with Shira Hirshberg. She's from All Foods Nutrition, and you're going to be joining us a couple times a month.
I am.
Talking about all things nutrition. You're a registered and licensed dietitian and nutritionist.
Correct.
So thank you again for joining us. And today we're discussing almighty carbohydrates.
Yes.
Oh, exciting. So, lots of myths, legends, and facts about carbohydrates. So let's start off talking a little bit about just what carbs are.
Okay, so I think this is one of the common misconceptions. People have their idea of carbohydrates, and most people think about carbohydrates for one of two reasons. They're concerned about their weight, and they think that carbohydrates will affect that. And the other one is that maybe they have blood sugar problems, so that might be prediabetes or diabetes. So usually those are the two reasons people are thinking about carbohydrates. And so that's kind of the context I'm going to use today. So carbohydrates are in lots of foods, in fruits, in vegetables, in dairy, in grains, and beans. A lot of people don't think about those. So there's lots of things, cereals, lots of things we already know. Of course, bread, pasta is carbohydrates, but a lot of other foods that I call sneaky carbs that we might not think of that way.
Oh, sneaky carbs. Yeah, what are some sneaky carbs?
So really beans and beans are the main ones that I would say. If you look at kind of the amounts of carbohydrates, I'm going to refer to notes on this one. So, a cup of cooked broccoli, we all know that's pretty low in carbohydrates, right? It still is one. That's most of what's in there, but there's a lot of fiber in there. So there's only 11 grams of carbohydrates that really we're going to absorb. If we look at corn on the cob, right, which I think is a sneaky carbohydrate, most people know that's a little starchy, but not necessarily everybody. That bumps us up to 28 grams, right?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't even think that.
And then, whole wheat spaghetti, everyone knows that has carbohydrates, right? 35 grams per cup. Still always sticking with cups here. And then a cup of black beans is 40 grams.
Oh, really?
And most people think of that as a protein, right? Which it still is. It has 14 grams of protein, which is a good amount. But you also need to think about carbohydrates, especially if you're someone who has diabetes, and really, it makes a big difference.
Wow, I would not have known unless you turn around and look at the label,
right,
and you're looking at the carbohydrates.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about carbohydrates and kind of the misconception and going with that. Why you're looking at carbohydrates in a weight loss frame of mind.
Right. So most people think carbohydrates will help them gain weight, or cause them to gain weight. Most people who come into my office, that's what they say. Okay, I need to not eat carbohydrates. They're making me gain weight. And for some people who are particularly sensitive for whatever reason, maybe somebody has PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, those folks tend to be more sensitive to carbohydrates. That might be true for an individual, but it's certainly not true across the board because we all need carbohydrates to function. For most people, that's the majority of your energy you're taking in. Most people, half of their food is carbohydrates.
Well, yeah, especially if it's in broccoli, right? I mean,
exactly, it's in everything.
Sorry, you have to.
Your brain needs a certain amount, right? Your brain is we call it glucose-dependent tissue, which means it requires carbohydrates to work well. If it doesn't have carbohydrates, it has to work really hard to turn other things into something like carbohydrates. So really, it's important if you want, really good thinking and brain function to have a reasonable amount of carbohydrates. But some people also find that they don't feel full if they don't have them in most meals, and that they don't stay satisfied. And so for most people with weight loss, that's more important. Because you have a meal that only fills you up for an hour and then you're snacking in between, that's really fighting against what you're trying to do. So a lot of times, really, it's about looking at what's right for that person and kind of what's happening after meals to figure out how carbohydrates affect them and whether it's important for them to include them in meals or, maybe they don't have to in all meals.
So is it healthy, because you often see you stick to a low-carb diet. Is it healthy to have low carbs or to just cut out carbs altogether? Or does a no-carb diet really even exist?
A no-carb diet really doesn't exist, right? It's kind of a myth because, like I said, if broccoli is carbohydrates, everybody's getting some. Literally, if you lived on meat alone, yes, you could have a no-carbohydrate diet, but nobody does that, right, in reasonable America. In terms of low-carbohydrate diets, they do work to help people lose weight. They work equally well as other types of diets. So when they look at different types of diets over the long term, what they find is that everybody, the low-carb people tend to lose a little more weight at the beginning. And that's because when we store carbohydrates in our body, we store them with water. That type of storage is called glycogen. We put it in our liver and a little bit in our muscles, and that molecule holds a bunch of water. So if we stop eating as many carbohydrates and our body isn't keeping them in storage, we are literally peeing out extra pounds.
So it just goes.
Yep, it's water weight. So then the unfortunate thing is that feels really exciting at first, right? Like I lost a bunch of weight all of a sudden. But then you start eating any carbohydrates again, right? You have a slice of cake at a birthday party or at a wedding, and poof, those pounds come right back
Donuts
on.
come into the office.
Exactly. And that can
Thanks,
be really that can be really discouraging for people, right? So it's something important to understand if you're doing low carb that the beginning weight is water weight, not fat loss. And so that when it comes back on too, same thing. It's not that you did anything wrong, it's just that you ate carbohydrates, and that's how our body works. So when they look at these long-term over time, they find that everybody does similarly over time. Like I said, low-carb people tend to lose a little more weight more quickly, but then they end up in the same place as people who try other types of, traditional diets, maybe a low-fat diet, maybe a really high plant-based diet. The thing that matters most is how much support they get. So in research studies, that's from study personnel, right? So how many visits they had with the study personnel. You could say how many visits with a registered dietitian or somebody else that's supporting them on this journey really matters more than the type of food that they're eating over the long term.
So on average, what is a healthy type of carb, and what should we be eating, but what's a good idea of what kinds of carbs and how much we should be getting?
Yeah, in terms of what to aim for, I think healthy carbs are things that include other beneficial stuff, right? So whole grains have that, right? Whole grains, they haven't had all the stuff stripped out of them, so they still have a little bit of protein, they've got some fiber, they've got vitamins and minerals. So whole grains are definitely a better choice in terms of carbohydrates, in terms of grains. Starchy vegetables, even though they do have more calories and more carbohydrates than a non-starchy vegetable, they still have good nutrition. So they're fine to include. It's just you got to know what category they're falling in. You say, okay, the corn or the peas are replacing my bread, not my broccoli.
Oh, so you can have that when you're thinking about that plate.
Right.
They'll go on that part. They'll go on the carb portion.
Exactly.
Not necessarily the broccoli portion.
And
so
we'll talk healthy plate another time.
Yes. Oh, we are. We have that
just
planned out.
Stay tuned for that. But basically, when you're thinking about what goes where, yeah, the carbohydrate portion would include things like, most people know potatoes, but maybe, like I said, corn, peas, beans, winter squashes, people might not think of. Anything that's got that mushy texture tells you it's more of a carbohydrate. Like you think of something raw, broccoli, it's really crunchy. A pea, it's more squishy.
And that can help fill you up, right? Like that's
Absolutely.
what you were saying. Because I know sometimes when I eat, if I'm trying to, I crave those carbohydrates to help fill me up. Or especially like in the morning, or if I'm up too early, then that can help fill you up. So maybe instead of grabbing a piece of toast, you get some squash.
Yeah, or if you're choosing toast, pick a whole grain variety. And one of the things that can be tricky is finding that, right?
Yeah, how do you
you're looking
do
at
that?
labels.
Yeah.
You're like, what the heck are these? There's all these different labels, and they try to make it confusing. So the key to look at is the ingredients.
Okay.
The first ingredient needs to start with the word whole. So it'll say whole wheat or whole rye, and that really tells you. Oftentimes you'll notice if it says multigrain, the first ingredient might say enriched or just wheat flour. Just wheat flour means it's not whole. It's just normal white flour is all wheat flour. Second ingredient might say whole this, whole that, but that's not the thing that's mostly in there. So you want the thing that's mostly in there to be whole.
So you want to look for if you're looking, maybe say at toast or crackers or something along those lines.
Cereal.
Because that's very confusing when you're looking at products. What do I want, the multigrain? Do I want the whole wheat? If you're trying to decide which one, you say look for the ingredient that says whole.
Whole, yep. And if you're looking at the front of the package, you need to make a quick choice. If it says 100% whole wheat on the front, they're not lying about that. They can't.
Oh, okay.
So that one's a safe choice. But if you're looking for a multigrain and you want it, there are some great ones out there, but you need to check to make sure they say whole in front of those ingredient names.
Because labels can be so confusing, and you're like you said, you have to make a quick choice. Not everybody has time.
Right.
So let's go into the fiber aspect of things.
Sure.
And talk a little bit about fiber and its role, because that counts.
Yeah, and fiber's pretty hot right now, right? They're throwing fiber in everything. There's fiber in your yogurt, there's fiber in all kinds of weird stuff you would never
liquid
expect.
fiber, yeah.
So fiber is really important, but you don't need to get it from weird sources like yogurt. Yogurt should not have fiber in it, right? So
line of the day, yogurt should not have fiber. From our nutritionist and dietitian expert. Okay.
Where you should find fiber is things that naturally contain it, right? Whole grains, because they come from a whole wheat, it has fiber around it, that should have fiber in it. Cereal, same thing. It's from a whole grain product, it will have fiber in it. Fruits and vegetables are the other thing, and most people don't eat enough of those. So really, if we get those, 2 fruits a day, 3 vegetables a day, that is kind of the general recommendation, plus we have whole grains, usually people get the fiber they need.
And so what do you do if you have dietary needs or you have dietary restrictions. To get one, you need those carbs or you need that fiber, you're in that realm, and you can't eat certain things, or you have diabetes, or you have celiac, or you have a certain condition.
Yeah, so that can be really challenging. You know, I'd say people that are sensitive to gluten certainly have more of a challenge getting whole grain, because a lot of stuff's made with white rice.
Yeah.
When you're looking at those products. So looking for things made with brown rice is one of the easiest things for that. But really those people often need help from somebody to figure out what the best way to get that is for them. If you have individualized needs, getting individualized help is really great. So one of the places to look is the website. I'm on the board of the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. We have a website, it's eatrightri.org, and there's a Find an RDN, which stands for Registered Dietitian Nutritionist. So if you click that, it'll go by town and tell you who are the people near you that are in private practice.
So if you do need help figuring all this out, because it is hard, just navigating the food world is complicated and hard if you're dealing with carbohydrates or you're dealing with fats or anything else. All right, so let's talk a little bit about carbohydrates and really how they impact energy. Because you can feel so tired when you wake up and you think, all right, well, if it's an apple or a bagel, which is easier, which is faster, which is going to help me get up and get moving better?
Great question. So I think both of those things are primarily carbohydrates, right? There's nothing else going on there, which is fine. I would say, if the apple, of course, will have fiber in it. The bagel may or may not, depending on the bagel, or you get a whole wheat bagel, it'll have some fiber. Because there's a little bit of fiber, that will hold you over a little bit longer. But really, ideally, to keep your energy going, you have to combine those with things like protein and healthy fat. So example might be add peanut butter to either of those, and that will keep you going a lot longer than just the carbohydrate alone. Because when we get carbohydrate in our body, we'll use it and we'll lose it pretty quickly. So to keep that energy sustained, you need other stuff in there. So you really got to add some protein or some healthy fat at least to keep you going longer.
So carbohydrates aren't necessarily the best way to continue with that energy.
Right, exactly. They'll get you started with your energy, but to keep it going, you need some other stuff too. So really trying to combine foods in ways that keep your energy going throughout the day is really key.
So when people are training for events, I mean, is that really, you hear about carb loading for, marathons or big events like that. I mean, is that really a healthy way to sustain or to boost energy?
So it's funny that we're talking about carb loading because that gets back to glycogen, right? We talked about glycogen before. So all that does is the night before, it's basically throwing as much glycogen into your liver as you can manage. So it's not unhealthy because people are doing it for these rare occasions.
Yeah.
If you were carb loading every night, that'd be good for you.
Pizza every night, not so much.
But before a long race, a serious endurance, that's totally reasonable. And there's good evidence to support that it helps.
So every now and then for something, carb loading for Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, maybe not so much.
Exactly.
And so let's continue with that. Is it healthy to carb overload along those lines? If it's for a certain event, okay, but otherwise?
Yeah, is there such a thing as too many carbohydrates? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that we have too much of, protein, fat, carbohydrates, will eventually get stored as fat, right? If you get too much food and you're not going to use it for energy, then we're going to store it, and fat's the only way our body has to long-term store stuff. Once we fill up that glycogen, which is in the liver, we only have so much space for that, then we'll go to fat. So too much carbohydrates will eventually lead to weight gain if you do that over time. Same thing if you have too much protein or too much fat.
Okay. And really, is there a way to get rid of the good carb, bad carb mentality, or is there really a good carb, bad carb mentality?
Well, so my business is called All Foods Nutrition for a reason. I believe that, we have to love our food, and our food has to love us back. So when it comes to us loving our food, sometimes you're going to choose a refined carbohydrates because it's bread from 7 Stars and it's incredibly delicious.
And it tastes really good.
And that's great too, right? Because you have to have a positive relationship with food. You can't only make choices for health benefits. That's not realistic. We live in a culture of food, so sometimes those choices are going to be about other things, and that's okay. So I have something like, I like an 80-20 rule. So 80% of your choices should be basic supporting your health, 20% should be for fun and enjoyment, and that's okay. You got to give yourself a little bit of leeway, or you're not going to keep it going for the long term, which is always my goal.
I think that's a good place to end it. 80-20, 80 for health reasons, 20 for fun. I think I can live on that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good goal as we move forward. 80-20, keep that in mind, especially in the carbohydrate forefront, because I don't always think it's healthy to have that gung-ho mentality of like, I can't eat carbs, or I can't eat fats, or I can't eat, because it's definitely not healthy.
Right.
And you're going to join us a couple times a month to talk about all things health and nutrition and keeping that mentality with us.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Shira. She is with All Foods Nutrition, and yes, she is going to join us a couple times a month. So if you have any nutrition questions, let us know, and because we're definitely brainstorming a ton of topics, which I'm super excited about.
We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you have more questions for her, you can contact us and your website,
allfoodsnutrition.com.
Allfoodsnutrition.com. I had it on the tip of my tongue. Let's put it out. All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Great.